What's up, YouTube? Welcome to the least fun, or most fun, depending on your perspective, mid-year list that I'll be doing on this channel. The top 5 worst albums of the year so far. Just like I did in 2016, I'm only doing 5, mostly because I just don't enjoy re-listening to albums I already don't like for hours on end just to try to determine the order in which they suck. Like, who wants to spend their time doing that? Luckily, these 5 albums were pretty easy for me to pick because more so than the good albums that I'll be talking about next week, these really stood out to me as being egregiously bad albums that I unfortunately made the mistake of giving a chance and ended up spending some of my valuable time on planet Earth listening to them. 2 of these I even gave the full review treatment on this channel, so it's hard to forget about them. And it should go without saying that if you're watching this and you happen to like some or all of these albums, this is not a personal attack on you, it's just a taste thing. To my ears, these albums blew. But that's my ears, and we all have different sets of them. So as long as we have that understanding going in. And without further ado, the shittiest albums of 2017 so far. So this 5th spot was the only one that I struggled with because it could have gone to a lot of albums. Tiny Tempa, Wale, Memoriam, who I reviewed on this channel and was told to kill myself by commenters, Papa Roach, Fat Joe, Falling in Reverse, All That Remains. A lot of options. But I ultimately went with Logic's new album, Everybody. Logic is a beloved and talented up-and-coming MC who's on his 3rd major label studio album now. And he often comes up in conversations about the leaders of the new school when people try to discuss who are the great young MCs who are going to carry the torch for great rapping as an art form. People like Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole and Vince Staples and Big Sean come up frequently, as does Logic. And I am just flabbergasted that people think that Logic is on the same level as any of those names I just mentioned. I love Logic's passion for hip-hop and his positive, happy-go-lucky personality. It has always seemed like his head is in the right place, but I just think as an MC, he is so overrated. And not bad, just overrated. I think his rhyme schemes are pretty elementary when contrasted with the level of elite lyricism that people seem to ascribe to him. I think his flows are very derivative of his contemporaries. And he is exhibit A when it comes to MCs who rap fast to cover up whack bars. Just take this example from his debut album, Under Pressure, a track called Bounce, which is actually a dope track and one of my favorite tracks Logic has ever done, but I'm trying to prove a point here. These bitches, they love it, but I never covet. I just keep it going, that's why I be flowing. I'm already knowing this life that I'm living, don't know what I'm giving. And Logic delivers those bars in this rapid fire delivery at the end of the 2nd verse, and it sounds cool, because it's fast, but if any rapper were to spit those lines slow, they would be whack as fuck. So that's just one of the things that gets on my nerves with Logic. But hey, just because he's a little overrated doesn't mean that I've disliked all of his music. I think he's made some dope music. But that stopped with this album, Everybody. Everybody is such an earnest and from the heart record, so that's why it hurts to critique it, and I can't take anything away from that. But to me, Logic comes across really whiny on this album, and it gives me such a headache. A majority of these tracks lyrically just center on Logic being biracial and being salty about it, which would have been a compelling topic for a song or two, but across a whole album, it's just such tiresome and draining subject matter that is really specific to Logic. It kind of reminds me of the Childish Gambino album Camp, where every song was about how he's black, but black people don't accept him. And as much as you wanted to sympathize with him, it was difficult with this whole self-centered mope fest that was going on. That's kind of what this album is to me. And I'm excited to see what Logic does next because he is an ambitious and talented artist. But this album was not for me. I hate this album. Number 4 is the Chainsmokers with Memories Do Not Open. A really cool title to waste on such a shitty record. That's a shame. But I'm not exactly going against the grain by hating on this album. You can find eloquent and nuanced bashing of this album in the likes of Rolling Stone, Pitchfork, John Caramanica from the New York Times didn't like this. I'm not really sure who liked it, actually. All I'm going to say about this record is that, for my tastes, the Chainsmokers make dance music that is so brutally watered down with some of the most immature, mind-numbing lyrics. There's lots of shallow allusions to drinking and girl problems and a lot of stuff that, to put it nicely, is very understimulating for me. And it's not like music has to always be this super deep journey of self-discovery, but it has to offer something. And these songs aren't even catchy enough to motivate me to try to see past all the other things that I don't like about it. Taking home the bronze, the shit bronze, is Linkin Park with One More Light. I don't even know what this band is doing anymore. You can check out my full review of this record if you want the entire spiel. But basically what happened is Linkin Park just started reaching out in the dark for any pop trend they could grab onto, and what resulted was one of the most awkward sounding musical compromises I have ever heard. I mean, I kind of respect them in a way for just saying fuck it and making these like straight up pop songs like Heavy and Battle Symphony and that awful like pseudo folk thing, Sharp Edges. I mean, it takes courage or a bigger advance from their record label, I don't know. I just found myself wondering who the audience even is for this record. Because even the most ride or die Linkin Park fans, a majority of them want a return to the rap rock, rap metal that kickstarted the band's career. And meanwhile, the pop world doesn't really care about Linkin Park. Not enough for this to be a massive record beyond like whatever one or two songs the label chooses to push. So I'm not sure who this record is for. And if you say that Linkin Park made this record for them, fuck you. Fuck you. That is not how the music business works. I'm sorry. It sounds like a nice fairy tale when bands say it in interviews, but at this level, the level that Linkin Park are at, not how it works. Okay, it was a bloody fight to the death for worst album of 2017 so far, and just narrowly missing the top or bottom slot is Machine Gun Kelly with Bloom. This album is some of the most nauseating, painfully calculated pop rap I have ever heard. And MGK has always had a foot in that world, but this is just like full on, shameless. Like whoever convinced him he could sing. There's a song on here called Let You Go where Machine Gun Kelly is like the frontman of his own little computerized pop punk band. And I have never cringed so hard. MGK is not like the gritty underdog anymore, so the only card he has left to play is this inspirational angle. But his writing is so lazy and so corny and not insightful at all. Like in the song At My Best, just listen to these lines. Life is about making mistakes. It's also about trying to be great. I got issues, just like you got issues. Thanks, Dad. Yeah, avoid this album at all costs. And speaking of albums that you should avoid at all costs, unless you're like one of those people who loves a train wreck and just can't look away, Suicide Silence gets the gold with their horrific, internet-shattering self-titled album. I did a full review of this thing on this channel. Basically what happened is a deathcore band decided to hire the biggest nu metal producer of 1999 and try to make a nu metal record, which I was as open-minded and as curious as you can be. That's the only reason I checked this record out. If it was going to be another deathcore album, I would have skipped it. I love to be the guy who likes the record that everybody else hates, especially in metal where people are so hardo and just so over the top about what's not metal and what's worthy and what's not worthy. So I went into this wanting to like it, but I ended up hating it just as much as everybody else. I'm a basic bitch. On this album, vocalist Eddie Hermida delivers some of the worst clean singing I have ever heard in my life. Whether he was purposely out of key to sound edgy or tortured or whatever, it doesn't matter. Either way, it sounds like ass. Like if Kevin from The Office were to just eat like 3 giant Chipotle steak bowls and just shove them into his face and then let out the most horrific, catastrophic fart imaginable, I would rather listen to that than listen to Eddie Hermida on this album. What's funny though is the Machine Gun Kelly record was definitely worse, but Suicide Silence's response to some of the criticism that got thrown in their face over this album was some of the most childish, pathetic, and hypocritical shit I have ever seen. It made me hate this album even more, and it made me really glad that I shat on it like I did. Because usually I feel so bad criticizing someone else's art. Anything where they poured their blood, sweat, and tears into it and bared their soul on it, it really is something that when you're doing it, you have to tread lightly because it takes so much vulnerability to make art and just put it out there to the world. But after I saw what these motherfuckers were saying in the press, I was just like, yeah, I stand by everything I say. Fuck you. The way Eddie Hermida in particular responded in the press with these disrespectful, patronizing rants about fans just not getting it or it just went over all of our heads. It's like, no, your album sucked. You tried an experiment and it failed. That's perfectly okay. It has happened to countless artists before you, and it will continue to happen until the end of time. There's no need to put this all on the fans, who, by the way, are the reason you're able to do what you do. They've put you in this fucking position, and now they're just too stupid to like your music? Fuck you. So to respond to criticism of your album by saying that Cannibal Corpse and Black Dahlia Murder are sellouts because they just didn't have the courage to hire a famous producer and try to recreate one of the most commercially successful fads that metal has ever seen, fuck you, dude. And that's it. The Band-Aid has been ripped off. I'm so glad to be done with this negative Nancy stuff for now, and I cannot wait to get into the good stuff next week. Stay tuned for multiple videos on my favorite albums of the year so far. As always, thanks so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe, leave a comment, or shoot me a message so we can continue to talk music, and I'll see you guys soon.